Have you ever loved someone who constantly pulls away the moment you get close? One day they're warm, loving, and the next they vanish emotionally like a ghost. It's like trying to hug a shadow, and you wonder, is it me, is it them, or is there a deeper pattern at play here? Today, we're going to break that pattern forever. You don't fix an avoidant with force. You free them with faith. Love isn't about making someone stay. It's about making it safe enough for them to choose to. You have that power. Use it not to control, but to heal, and when you do, you won't just change a relationship. You'll change a life. Have you ever stood in front of someone you love, pouring your heart out, only to be met with silence, distance, or emotional withdrawal? It's one of the most confusing and painful dynamics in love, when you're emotionally available, but the person you care about starts to pull away just when things are getting close. This is the reality of loving someone with an avoidant attachment style, and here's the hard truth. Their distance, their walls, their pushback, it's not about you. We often internalize rejection. That's what the mind does. It goes, what did I do wrong? Why don't they love me the same way I love them? Am I too much? But the truth is, avoidants are not afraid of you. They're afraid of what closeness represents. To them, intimacy is unfamiliar territory, often associated with loss of control, emotional engulfment, or even pain. You're not the problem. You're standing too close to an emotional tripwire they've spent a lifetime trying to avoid. When someone is avoidant, they've likely been programmed, usually in childhood, to equate vulnerability with risk. Maybe they had a caregiver who was inconsistent, overbearing, or emotionally unavailable. So, what did they do? They built armor, not out of cruelty, not out of manipulation, but for survival. That armor became their safe zone. So now, when they enter a relationship and feel love bubbling up, something ancient in them whispers, run. And here's where most people make a critical mistake. They try to break down that armor with force. They demand answers, they chase, they overcommunicate, they push for more closeness. But that only activates the avoidant's nervous system to retreat further. Every time you push when they're overwhelmed, you unknowingly confirm their fear that closeness equals danger. Instead of healing them, you become part of the very chaos they're trying to avoid. So if you want to make an avoidant feel secure, the first move isn't to reach for them, it's to reframe your perspective. Recognize that their distance is a pattern, not a personal rejection. When you shift from judgment to compassion, from reaction to understanding, you take the first step toward real emotional connection. You become the person who sees beyond their defenses, one who doesn't take their fear as a verdict, but as a signal that they need something deeper, not more affection, but more safety. And when you give that, without chasing, without demanding, you stop being a trigger and start becoming a sanctuary. When you're in love with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, your natural instincts can betray you. When they start to pull away, you want to close the gap. You want to talk more, call more, fix what feels like it's falling apart. But this is where the game changes, because the avoidant doesn't respond to pressure. In fact, pressure is what makes them run. What they respond to is emotional certainty, not certainty in the form of clinging, but certainty in the form of calm, grounded presence. Imagine someone standing in a room filled with smoke. The avoidant lives in that smoke its emotional confusion, past trauma, fear of losing themselves in a relationship. Now imagine you burst into that room, waving your arms, shouting, demanding clarity. That smoke just gets thicker. But if you walk in and sit quietly, breathing deeply, waiting with calm, eventually they notice. There's someone here who isn't afraid of the smoke. That's the energy that shifts everything. Emotional certainty is not loud. It's not reactive. It's not begging or bargaining or arguing your worth. It's being so rooted in your own sense of self that you don't need to chase them to prove your value. You're not here to convince them to love you. You're here to embody what love actually feels like, secure, steady, and unshakable. That's what the avoidant doesn't even know they crave, because they've never seen it modeled. So, when they start pulling away, instead of saying, "Why are you doing this?" Do you even care about me? You show up with energy that says, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm also not going to panic. You give them emotional room without turning cold. You offer reassurance without demand. That balance, firm yet gentle, available but not intrusive, is what allows them to take off their emotional armor. This doesn't mean you shrink or silence yourself. It means you speak with intention, not desperation. You let your presence speak louder than your fears. The more consistent you are in your energy, the more their nervous system can relax in your presence. Eventually, they begin to see that being close to you doesn't mean losing themselves. They start to associate connection with peace, not pressure. And that's when you stop being the person they run from and become the one they can finally run to. Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style requires a deep understanding of a paradox. They crave connection just like anyone else, but they need space to feel safe within it. Most people misunderstand this. They think giving space means pulling away, going cold, or withholding affection. But that's not what an avoidant truly needs. What they need is structured space, not absence, not abandonment, but the freedom to be themselves without fear of being emotionally consumed. Avoidants often grew up in environments where emotional boundaries were blurred or ignored. Maybe they had caregivers who were overly intrusive or dismissive of their autonomy. So now, in their adult relationships, their instinct is to guard their independence with intensity. When a relationship feels too close, they fear losing control, losing identity, or being judged. That's why when they start to feel deeply, they retreat, not because they don't care, but because they're afraid of being swallowed up. Here's where most relationships with avoidance go wrong. Their partner misreads this need for breathing room as disinterest or rejection. So they respond with protest behaviors, calling more, texting more, trying to reconnect quickly to ease their own anxiety. But this approach backfires. It confirms the avoidant's fear that relationships come with pressure, expectations, and emotional overwhelm. It teaches them to see closeness as a threat instead of a source of comfort. So what's the antidote? You must create a dynamic that honors both connection and individuality. Space doesn't have to mean disconnecting emotionally. It can mean creating healthy rhythms where alone time is respected, not resented. It means letting them recharge without guilt trips. It means saying, I respect your need for space, and I trust that we're still connected even when we're not constantly interacting. This kind of space actually draws avoidance closer. Why? Because it gives them room to relax their defenses. When they don't feel pressured to perform or constantly explain themselves, they feel more free to show up authentically. It opens the door for voluntary connection, which is what avoidants trust most. They need to feel that their decision to stay is theirs, not something they were pushed or manipulated into. When you let go of the need to micromanage the emotional distance and instead create a steady, accepting energy, you teach the avoidant that space and love are not opposites. You show them that true intimacy can breathe, and that, ironically, is when it thrives. When you're in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, one of the most important yet often overlooked elements that builds trust is consistency. Not grand declarations of love, not dramatic displays of passion, but simple, grounded, day in, day out consistency, because for the avoidant, inconsistency isn't just inconvenient, it's emotionally unsafe. It taps into their deepest fears that love is unreliable, that people can't be counted on, and that opening up will only lead to disappointment or loss of control. This is where your real power lies, not in trying to fix them or change them, but in becoming someone they can count on. When you say you're going to call, call. When you say you understand their need for space, honor it. When you set a boundary, stick to it. That kind of emotional predictability sends a message stronger than any romantic speech ever could. You're safe here. And safety is what an avoidant needs before they can even think about vulnerability. One of the avoidant's deepest fears is emotional dependency. They don't want to need someone else to regulate their inner world because Their past, the people who were supposed to be reliable often weren't, so when they enter relationships, they're constantly scanning for signs that history is repeating itself. A missed promise, an emotional outburst, a shift in tone. These things, while small to you, can feel huge to them. That's why being emotionally consistent isn't just helpful, it's healing. But this consistency has to come from a grounded place. If you're being consistent while secretly hoping they'll change or using it as a strategy to get them to open up, they'll feel the pressure beneath the surface. Authenticity matters here. Be consistent because that's who you are, not because you want to manipulate an outcome. Over time, your steady presence becomes a kind of emotional retraining. Where they once expected chaos, they now experience calm. Where they braced for emotional whiplash, they begin to settle into trust. Eventually, what was once unfamiliar emotional stability starts to feel normal, and that's the breakthrough. You're not just showing them that love can be safe, you're helping them feel that safety in their nervous system. That feeling is the foundation for real intimacy. Because when an avoidant starts to trust your emotional rhythm, they no longer have to be on guard. They can finally rest. They can finally lean in, and that's when real love begins to grow. At the heart of every avoidant lies a deep yearning to love and be loved. But that yearning is wrapped in layers of fear, defense, and mistrust. Your job, if you truly want to build a connection that lasts, is not to crack them open with force, but to create the kind of environment where they can unfold on their own. This requires strength, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that holds steady in the face of emotional resistance. It demands patience, presence, and emotional intelligence. Most people try to fix the avoidant with words, but the truth is, healing doesn't come from talking about love. It comes from demonstrating it over and over again, especially when it's hard. Loving an avoidant isn't about changing them. It's about becoming the kind of person that allows their nervous system to relax in your presence. When you stop reacting to their distance with panic and start responding with calm certainty, you become a mirror of stability. You teach them that intimacy doesn't have to mean pressure or loss of control. You show them, not through lectures but through your energy, that closeness can be safe, spacious, and mutual. And slowly but surely, those walls begin to lower, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. This isn't easy work. It takes emotional discipline to not chase when they pull away. It takes self-respect to give space without abandoning your own needs. And it takes faith that consistency, compassion, and clarity are more powerful than pressure or performance. But the reward is extraordinary. When an avoidant begins to feel safe, they love in a way that is deeply loyal, steady, and real. Not because they were forced into connection, but because they chose it from a place of freedom. That's not just love, that's transformation. So, if you're here because you love someone who runs when things get close, don't chase, don't collapse, don't become the chaos they fear. Instead, become the calm they've never known. Build safety with your steadiness. Offer space with your strength. Lead with presence, not pressure, and above all, remember this: the way you love can be their healing, but only if your love is powerful enough to be patient, and wise enough to know that true connection isn't forced, it's invited. Thank you for being here. If this message resonated with you, it's because you're someone who doesn't just want love. You want to understand it, to nurture it, and to make it real, even when it's hard. That takes courage, that takes heart, and I honor you for that. If you're on a journey with an avoidant partner, or you're healing from being one, know this: your growth, your awareness, your patience, it matters. You are creating a ripple effect of emotional safety in a world that desperately needs it. Stay grounded, stay powerful, stay kind, and remember, healing love begins with how we show up. Calm, clear, and consistently. Until next time, take care of your heart, and there's goodbye for now.